I never thought my quiet life on the edge of town would turn into a full-blown war, but that's exactly what happened. It all started when I inherited a 10-acre plot of land right next to a fancy new housing development. My property had been in my family for generations, and it came with a little secret: a private reservoir and a dam, complete with its own spillway. I'm a prepper, always have been. My grandpa taught me the importance of being self-reliant. So, every year, I'd spend months stockpiling firewood for the long, cold winters. It was my routine, my peace of mind. The new neighbors, however, didn't see it that way. They formed a homeowners association, or HOA, and soon I started getting letters. First, it was about my unsightly woodpile. They called it a fire hazard, an eyesore. I tried to explain it was on my own land, far from their cookie-cutter houses, but they wouldn't listen. Leading the charge was a woman I'll call Brenda. She was a self-appointed queen of the HOA, and she made it her personal mission to make my life difficult. The letters got more aggressive, filled with threats of fines and legal action. I ignored them. It was my property, my wood, my business. One crisp autumn morning, I woke up to the smell of smoke. But it wasn't the comforting scent of my wood stove. It was thick, acrid, and alarmingly close. I ran outside, and my heart sank. My entire winter stockpile, months of hard work, was a blazing inferno. The heat was so intense it buckled the metal shed nearby. There was no doubt in my mind who was behind it. Later that day, the fire department confirmed my suspicions. It was arson. The investigator found evidence of an accelerant poured all over the woodpile. While there wasn't enough direct evidence to press charges against Brenda, the whole neighborhood knew. I'd see them whispering when I drove past. Brenda, however, was smug. She'd walk her little dog past my charred property with a triumphant smirk on her face. She thought she had one. She thought she had broken me. She had no idea what she had just unleashed. The anger inside me was a cold, hard knot. They had destroyed my security, my winter warmth, my family's legacy, and for what? So their view would be a little nicer. Fine. They wanted to play hardball. I was about to show them a game they weren't prepared for. My grandpa, the one who taught me about prepping, was also a brilliant engineer. He's the one who designed and built the dam and reservoir on our land. He taught me everything about it. Every valve, every gear, every contingency. He always said, control the water, and you control everything downstream. The reservoir was full, swollen from the recent autumn rains. Looking down from the dam, I could see the HOA community. All their pristine lawns and multi-million-dollar homes nestled in the valley below. They had built their luxury paradise in a natural floodplain, arrogantly assuming nothing could ever touch them. They had burned my winter. They had laughed at my loss. Now, the forecast was calling for a once-in-a-decade storm, a massive system that was going to dump inches of rain in just a few hours. The town had issued flood warnings for low-lying areas, but the HOA residents just scoffed. They felt safe, protected by their retaining walls and sophisticated drainage systems. They had no idea their entire drainage system fed into the very same creek that my spillway emptied into. They had no idea that I held the key. The night the storm hit was like something out of a movie. The wind howled and the rain came down in solid sheets. I sat in my house, watching the water level in the reservoir rise on my monitors. The town's emergency channels were buzzing. The creek was rising fast, faster than anyone predicted. That's when I made my decision. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about karma. It was about teaching a lesson in humility to people who had none. I walked out into the storm, the wind and rain lashing at me, and made my way to the spillway control wheel. With a deep breath, I put my hands on the cold, iron wheel. It was a manual system, old but incredibly reliable. My grandpa had insisted on it. Electricity fails, he'd said, but good old-fashioned leverage never does. I began to turn it. It was stiff at first, groaning in protest after years of disuse. But then it gave way. Slowly, painstakingly, I opened the spillway. Not all the way, that would have been catastrophic. Just enough. Just enough to add a little extra pressure to an already overwhelmed system. A torrent of water, a controlled, calculated release, surged from my reservoir and poured into the already swollen creek. It was the tipping point. Back in my house, I watched the live news feeds on my computer. The first reports started trickling in, unexpected flash flooding in the Oakview estates. That was them. Then came the videos. Water wasn't just creeping up their lawns, it was rushing through their streets. It poured into their manicured gardens, their three-car garages, their walkout basements. All those fancy drainage systems they were so proud of were now working in reverse, spouting water like geysers. I saw footage of a brand new Mercedes floating down what used to be Primrose Lane. I saw Brenda standing on her second-floor balcony in a silk robe, screaming into her phone as muddy water lapped at her front door. The smugness was gone, replaced by a pure, unadulterated panic. The very thing they had ignored, the natural power of the land they had tried to tame and manicure, was now reclaiming its territory, and I was the one who had opened the gate. The aftermath was biblical. The entire lower section of the HOA was a swamp. Their basements were flooded, luxury cars were totaled, and expensive landscaping was washed away. The total damage was in the millions. Investigators called it a freak event, a perfect storm of heavy rainfall and a saturated water table. No one ever suspected my little reservoir. To them, it was just an old pond on the crazy prepper's land. They never connected the dots. They were so blinded by their own arrogance, they couldn't see the truth right in front of them. Brenda and the HOA were broken. They were too busy dealing with insurance claims and lawsuits from their own residents to bother me anymore. They had tried to take away my warmth for the winter, and in return, nature, with a little help from me, gave them a bath they'd never forget. I never rebuilt the woodpile in the same spot. Instead, I built a new, bigger shed, reinforced and secure. And as I stacked my new supply of wood for the next winter, I couldn't help but smile. My peaceful life was finally safe. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Care and Conflict for more.